Hey,
chatters.
chatters!
Hello.
We've fully got the national Frank Walker from National
Frank Walker from
Tiles
National
intro
Tiles.
happening now.
Only the audience will
Hey,
know that.
chatters!
Hey, chatters from National Tiles. Welcome to our follow-up episode on socialized. Wait, now I've tripped myself up. Social lives in relationships, aka socialize.
I was trying to think of like a thing to go with that. Social
Socialize.
lives with social eyes.
There you go. All right. We'll see which title wins. We're going to follow on with an additional story and just a quick chat on the area of social isolation as we age, which is a real thing and not only valid to people that are aged, which we all are aged, depends who you're comparing it to, but those that are...
You got told something the other
day. My gosh.
Share that story.
I went to the zoo and happened to be talking to
by herself.
Just with my daughter. For her birthday. Happened to be talking to this lady at the cafe who we found out worked there. So I said, what do you do here? And she's like, I'm in customer service or something like that. And she's like, she was really friendly. She was lovely. But she's like, yeah, I've been doing it for 8 years. I started when I was 20. She's like, so I'm old now. And then she looked at me and she said, oh, I shouldn't say that to you. I'm sorry. So a 28-year-old woman looked at me and said that she shouldn't be talking about being old when she's talking.
I mean, he's only 42, so I don't even get it.
She's literally the age of my sister. It's not like we're that outside of the realm, but okay, I'm not 42. Blair's going to be 42 before
Get out.
Not even close to my 40s. Thank you very much.
And if you're 40 and listening to this, that's completely
Who cares?
fine.
That's amazing. 40's the new 20. Yeah. 40's the new 28. So this girl's got
28 has no clue.
Anyway, all that to say, this topic is not only relevant to those that would consider themselves older. It's relevant to those that consider themselves not older because it's a warning to heed and it's things to implement now. It's not things to try. And it doesn't mean that when you're there, you can't put things in place to fix it. But I think it's really important for us to recognize what patterns happen that lead people to social isolation as they get older and what you can implement now to mean that 10 years down the track, 20 years down the track, that's not your story. So that's why it's an important thing to chat through. And we're going to start with a Reddit episode, a Reddit story. Married 52 male, wife 50. Wow. Married 52 male, wife 50 female. Is it common for middle-aged men to not have any other close male friends? When I was younger, I had a large group of friends and had a few really close best friends. After we all got married, developed our careers, moved further, and had kids, free time became more rare and we drifted apart without any animosity. Since then, my free time is rare and my interest in meeting new friends is zero. I cannot explain why. Occasionally, I force myself to grab lunch or hang out with one of the guys I hung around with in my 20s who never married or emotionally evolved, and I find it boring because I'm now in my early 50s and he acts like he's in his 20s. Usually I dread it, but I do it anyway. Sometimes I go out with my wife and neighbors as a couple of her friends and their husbands, but none of them are my type. They are fine people, but the longing to spend time with them is just not there. I have a great marriage and my wife is my best friend. I know that shouldn't fulfill all relationships, but I'm wondering if it's normal or common. So I think it's normal to... I know it's normal that as you as you build your family, your focus becomes more and more there. So I don't think it's abnormal to feel more inclined to spend time with your family.
I've definitely, in this last episode, I shared a lot about me needing to be out of the house and socialize and all that sort of stuff. And we've spoken quite a bit that I'm already seeing this within myself, right? My need, when I was like in my 20s or late teens, I was always out of the house.
Yeah.
Like always going on adventures, full driving, swimming at night times. And I'd organize midnight swims with people just for an excuse to get out, to hang out with people. I was always out. And I was known as the social guy. Now, I still need socializing, but nowhere near as much. Like it's more of an effort now. And you help me with this as well. If I don't, I can get really low. But my drive for social, hangouts, whatever else, is really low. So my drive for it is low. My need for it is high. And I'm in this really weird stage where I'm like, I just want to hang out with my family. That's what's so bad about that. Yeah. I don't think it's bad. It's down to what we need and the danger of isolation and getting out of that house and stuff like that. They're the things that it could be a trap or a hindrance or a struggle.
And I think I think both of our drives for new friends has changed, but especially your drive for making new friends that aren't, you have a few really good friends that you've made that are just really aligned.
Yep.
But you've struggled to engage with people that aren't really aligned more and more as you've gotten older. And that sounds like what this man's saying is like, I just don't have time for people that I don't really align with.
Yeah.
And I think there's a beauty in that because you get more clear on what you want as you get older. And so, and it's not worth your time. Like if you heard our last episode and you heard us talk about the best friend that's just really toxic, it's not really worth your time maintaining relationships with people that aren't going to be giving life. But at the same time, I feel like it's easy to fall into a trap when you are like, oh, no, I'm going to pick and choose who I spend time with, to fall into a trap where it starts to become like there's almost no one that would fall into that category. And it's not necessarily that you're just being very picky and mature. It's almost more of like it becomes a protective thing. So I think really normal. I don't think it's something to be ashamed of or down on yourself for. I think it's so normal, and that's why where I've found some studies on this, and that's why these studies exist, because of how normal it is. Being normal doesn't mean it's healthy, and it being normal doesn't mean that continuing in that space is going to end up with you in the place that you want to be in, or end up with you in a healthy space. So I think like you have been recognizing this in yourself, and you work with guys in this space, which is really cool because it gives you kind of like an insight into this. But this is why it's an important thing to be aware of, because right now it's like oh, that's interesting. 10 years down the track, if you kind of pressed into that, it'd be more like I'm getting nervous about this. My dad and my parents separated when we got married, and my dad just had almost no friends. He just honestly had almost no one that was his individual friends. He was fully dependent on my mum and their family connections to be filled in the social space. And so I watched him really struggle. And thankfully for him, he did actually build a little bit of a network. It was really hard work. And I think it wasn't until that was kind of taken or all of a sudden gone that he was like, oh, hang on a sec. That's not healthy. And really brought out how unhealthy it was when you kind of have a Band-Aid constantly around, you don't necessarily see that. So I looked up some studies, and there's quite a few studies on isolation and social isolation and loneliness in older men. And I looked up what the reasons were. Like, why are these things? Why is it even a study, for one thing? So there's a higher risk of isolation in older men and loneliness compared to women. And this is because men tend to have, generally speaking, fewer closer friends and may find it harder to form new connections as they age. And I think that's exactly what we've just talked about. That's the why. Because they've got fewer closer friends, it contributes to their feeling of isolation. And the reason they've got fewer closer friends, one reason is traditional gender norms. I would be intrigued in 50 years' time to see what this is like, because I do feel like it's switching. But traditional gender norms may have led men to have less emphasis on maintaining deep personal friendships. And I can see that. It's not, especially, back in our parents' age, there wasn't a real focus on vulnerability and emotional vulnerability. And as you grow and you have difficulties, sharing that with your guy friends, I can only assume, would become harder if you don't have that as a natural thing that you've built in your friendships.
It's definitely changing. And I even had a conversation recently with some guys, and one of the guys mentioned, he's like, oh man, this is why I love this group so much, because we're actually talking about deep stuff. And it's still rarish, but nowhere near as much as it was. Like there's a lot more of an openness or a want to be able to share stuff.
What I think is, we've said this before, you repeat what you've seen. So I think our dad's age range was the first age where it started to shift. And they had not seen that from older generations. It just hadn't been the same, at least the most recent generations. And so I think it started to shift there, but they didn't know what to do. And so they kind of stumbled through it. And then now where the kind of steps down from that, where we saw them stumbling through it and not having much success sometimes, and it's continuing to shift. And now where hopefully by the time our kids are older, they will have seen these dads that are like, no, I know we need to do this, or these men, and put these things in place, and that will be kind of more natural. But yeah, I do think we're in that little transition.
Something I've been noticing with myself is the way that I navigate friendships too. And what I this is all an assumption, okay? And this is all just trying to reflect on what I've seen. What I've seen is guys working. So you see relationships through work. And I've noticed as well, like even with my cutoff, my expectations and all this sort of stuff in friendship, it's kind of the same lenses I would have with my work colleagues. It's like, because I manage a bunch of people, right? I manage people around Australia, and I have these specific expectations on these people that I manage. I have like time expectations, I have communication expectations, I have all these different expectations.
Yeah.
And I've seen in older generations, and I've seen in myself that's kind of the lens that I go into friendship relationships with as well. If someone doesn't communicate well with me, I get very frustrated. If someone doesn't honor my time, I get very frustrated. And it's it's his expectations, and I find that difficulty of like shifting from work relationship to like managing people to friendship relationship,
which is
got nothing to do with my work, but I still have those same expectations. And that's where I struggle, because I struggle with the exact same things in my friendships as I do with my work.
I wonder if there's an identity thing in that too, especially the traditional stuff still impacting, like this identity of the man provides for the family. The man has to provide. And so it's become this like work is everything. Work is everything. And I will succeed in that providing work-wise.
Yeah.
That kind of filters into not knowing how to separate that from the other areas of life.
Yeah, because I'm terrible. I know I'm a terrible friend if I don't see people. If I don't see you, it's not that I cut you off. I just don't put in the effort, because my focus has got to be, well, I've got my work, I've got my family. Anything outside of that, I really struggle to have as a priority and as a focus.
Yeah, and you really struggle to just talk, like as in, no, you don't struggle.
No, but like about anything else other than going like from 0 to 100 and
to just have like superficial chat.
Yeah,
but also you don't like messages.
I hate
and you don't
messages.
have time for phone calls. And even when we started dating, like I remember you saying you put so much effort into actually messaging, which you did really well. And then that slowly turned into thumbs ups as we got more and more into our relationship, which thankfully I understood where it's coming from. But I don't know if this is generalizing, but women relationships are so based on communication. Like we just chat. We chat about lots of things. Whereas I think guys tend to, generally, it's more active. Like, and even when we were doing youth group, we were taught with a bunch of boys, you can't just have them sitting in a circle talking.
You'll be doing something.
Do something, like throw the basketball around and like do something active at the same time to engage that part. So I think with social media, with text messages, it's more natural, generally speaking, for a woman to just message, and that can be a way that they maintain relationship. But I don't think naturally speaking, or generally speaking, guys would just fall into that.
Yeah.
And so that's another way that I reckon it kind of cuts off, because you have to actually be so intentional about actively doing something with them to maintain the relationship.
Yeah.
Because of the traditional stuff that might be impacting men as they age and as they like feed into their friendships, they struggle with isolation due to societal norms, which discourages emotional expression and seeking support. And so if you're not seeking support and having emotional expression, you're just reinforcing and exasperating loneliness, because you start to just reinforce this, like removing yourself from those things. And then health problems as you age as well, mobility and that kind of thing, can restrict interactions. And I think that plays into what we've just said, because it's not a pattern of just sitting around chatting. If a man becomes more immobile as he gets older, if there's a health issue, whatever, that active element can be more and more removed. And so I think that might even more reinforces the isolation, because they don't even know what socializing is outside of that stuff. Need for support. There's not many, as you would know from your work, there hasn't been many broad support networks for men in terms of these spaces. So dads, for example, there's not many broadly accepted networks for supporting men as they become dads. There's many for women, because women have a whole different side of becoming a mom, physically and everything. There's tons of supports that have been in there, but for men there's not. And so there's a lot of gaps like that, where there's social groups and social clubs and social stuff that has been there for women, and for one reason or another, potentially the work being the main focus, that hasn't been. There's gaps in the support networks that are actually provided. And so as they get older, there's less to support them when they are feeling vulnerable in this space. And that just increases the isolation. So I just quickly looked up as I was looking through these surveys, things that can help in this space, things to be aware of now that will help reinforce this for you as you age. If you're a woman listening to this and you're like, actually, I struggle with this, take it on board. It's not specific to men. It's just we've highlighted why this may be more of a case for men, but it doesn't mean that it's not helpful across the board. So staying socially active, putting yourself out there is really hard, especially as you get older and you have kids and you get more like everything we've said becomes more. Actually putting the effort into putting yourself out there is really tiring. And we found that when we moved up here, we were just have a whole new world, and we had to intentionally open ourselves up to friendships, and that was into putting ourselves out there. It's really exhausting, but the payoff is good. Huge.
It made us feel at home.
Exactly.
Finally.
The payoff was a game changer for us. So really important to sit back and be like, am I putting myself out there? If I need to build new things, and am I putting myself out there with my existing relationships to get a little uncomfortable with making sure I'm maintaining them? Expressing emotions, if you've got the emotional side of things, being the person who breaks that little like bubble and is willing to share emotionally, I think can be one of the most empowering things ever. If you're not in a network that's doing that naturally, sometimes it's like, oh, these people, we don't talk like this. But a lot of the time, if you did talk like that, almost all of them would resonate. And I feel like this is the case with lots of the dad stuff that you work in. You see these in the groups around Australia. Like one person says something and then all of them like, oh, yeah. And like you realize everyone's dealing with it, but people just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to put yourself out there, it can be a game changer. Using technology. So getting connected in a digital way that's maybe a little bit outside of your preference, but willing to put yourself out there in a way that's going to be more maintainable. Marco Polo is an example for you because I use it every day. But you've had to be really intentional with doing that and pushing that awkwardness so that you do have people that you're chatting to on there. And I think that's, from what I've seen.
Yeah, but really it's still a fight because it's like I do it when I'm driving. I've got to have my space. But if I'm not like, because otherwise because I can do it while I'm driving. Do you know what I mean? In a safe way. But if I'm at home, I don't do it.
And if you live in the country like us, we don't drive very long unless we're going on a trip. Yeah.
But again, like because I put my phone away a lot too, like, because it can be a distraction. I'm on my phone a lot and with computer and emails and all this sort of stuff for work. So my phone is like any other technology on my phone to keep in touch with people. It's why I don't like phone calls, because I'm on the phone a lot for work. It's why I don't like emails. I don't like text messages. I'm messaging people all the time for work. So it feels like work in a way.
So maybe putting something in place that you still push through that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then getting involved and building networks, prioritizing your social stuff is all really important. So if you're removing yourself from the world around you, you're probably just going to continue down that track. But being like, where can I get involved? For us right now, where can we get involved in the school that our kids are in? Where can we get involved in the church that we're a part of? Where can we get involved? I've just started getting involved in theater, putting ourselves out there in a broader involvement way, I think. And I've seen it play out. Like your mom is so involved and she does so well. So it's seeing those things that you can put yourself out there for and be involved in, even if it's not necessarily needed now, but could be really helpful down the track. And managing your health proactively so that you are on top of that as you age, and those things don't become such an immediate and intense roadblock in your social stuff.
I saw something yesterday, and I'm going to keep this very, very brief, is that, if you do 1 hour of weightlifting a week, 1 hour a week. So it's like you could do 2 sets of heavy exercise. Just 2 sets, like for 2 times a day or whatever, 2 times a week or 3 times a week, whatever. It reduces like 30% of causes of death.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not
ridiculous.
Surprised. Yeah. As you age, the weight training is so important.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
It is wild.
I need to do more.
Yeah, must do. We just bought weights. So. All right.
We bought dumbbells from Kmart.
Yeah. One weight.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. So yeah, that's aging, that's social isolation. Just a really brief, quick overview, but hopefully there's something we can all glean from that. And if you haven't entered our giveaway, you guys are the biggest priorities. Is that an actual?
Now.
So go ahead and enter that. We know who you are because you're a part of our family. But please still do send us a little message saying, I'm here. so that we can know that we're entering you in. But have a great week. Other than that, guys.
Great. Thanks,
Cool. See ya.
chatters. Bye.